Hello, Kindred. Welcome to the Curiosity stream, specifically the Ink and Stardust book reading list of 2022. Did I put 2021 on the original thing? I think I did. Silly old bear. Anyway, whole point is, in the month of January, we read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. It's his debut novel. And if you're curious about this list, it was decided by, I put a poll out there. I gleaned suggestions from all of my socials, including TikTok, and there was hundreds of them. And then I made a gigantic poll and had everybody vote for up until the new year. And
I'm so excited for some of these.
Me too.
Oh my god.
And then if you're curious about the list, I will it's on my blog. I'll put a link in all the descriptions and whatnot if you're like, oh, what's next? Spoilers, what's next is This Is How You Lose a Time War. Anyway, I am joined by my good friend and amazing writer and beauteous person named Zoe. Zoe's fantastic and amazing, and she should tell you about the small author project that she's working on, because I'm really excited about it and I just want to hype her in any way I can.
Sure. So the small author project I started over on a blog that is just bookworm stuff, worm spelled with a Y, where basically twice a week I feature a book by a small author or a self-published author, something along those lines. I review author books or small authors that are donated either through the what's the word I'm looking for? Amazon wishlist, or there are some lovely people who donate every month so that I can purchase these authors' books. And I also do the same stuff over on TikTok and spend a lot of time talking about books and small authors and occasionally cold lizards.
Indeed. And she's also working on a really cool project that I'm hoping she gets off the ground about a digital library specifically honoring self-published authors, which I think is freaking awesome.
Yes, and actually today is the last day of that survey for everyone who signed up for it. So tomorrow I get to start sifting through all of those answers.
That'll be fun.
Yes, it will. I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it because this is the first time I've actually reached out to the community and been like, idea, is it terrible? And I get to find out what the answer to that is.
I love it. I love it. I'm very excited. Okay. So the time has come.
Yes.
Dear listeners, dear watchers, dear beauteous people of the internet, if you have not read An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green and plan on reading it, and you don't like spoilers, or you're just very averse to spoilers in general, now is the time to turn to a different video and or listening device piece of content.
Grab a fruit snack on your way out.
Exactly. In the words of Katiosaurus, grab a fruit snack on your way out. I don't have a fruit snack for you. Can I offer you these glorious decorative metallic pens? Brilliant. All right, so first things first. Do you want to give us a brief summary? You don't have to read the entire thing that we talked about, just like the highlights, or in your own words, what this story is. And then I know we both have the Wikipedia up just to be try and not miss anything.
All right. I'm gonna give the not my own words because I have a lot of thoughts about the plot. So in not my own words, our protagonist April May discovers a robot sculpture in Midtown Manhattan. She quickly she becomes an overnight celebrity after her friend Andy Scamp makes a YouTube video with her, which goes viral. Because there are 63 other, what she has dubbed Carl. There are 63 other Carls throughout the world that appeared overnight. It does turn out to be a gigantic robot. And
alien?
Hijinks Alien? Question mark? And hijinks ensue.
Yeah, so essentially, the very watered down Curiosity Sparks notes of this is they discover that there is no possible way due to his chemical makeup that Carl can be of this world. And basically you have governments start to go what? And lots of things start getting involved. violence kind of ensues from some xenophobic folks. We'll talk about them in a bit. I want to start this with the fact that I knew nothing about this book when it was first recommended. I knew Hank Green. I follow Hank Green, but it was sort of in the back of my mind of, I want to pick this up at some point, but I hadn't. I knew nothing about it. Yeah, the TikTok guy, as my wife was jokingly says. But I need to read to you the summary that I read when this is all I knew about going into it. Because now you guys know that there are aliens and that there is basically a terrorist attack happens later, assassinations, all of this. We'll get into it. But
what is the blurb?
Summary blurb I read going into this was
I'm excited.
An absolutely remarkable thing follows April May, a young queer woman launched into internet celebrity. One night, she and her friend Andy post a silly news report on the arrival of a mysterious sculpture in the heart of Manhattan. As these statues pop up in dozens of major global cities, the video goes viral. That's all I knew. That's it. So when this literally made the turn for sci-fi, I was like, I'm not mad, but I didn't see it coming.
So I knew that there was a sci-fi element to it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that there was a sci-fi element to it. So I don't think I was as surprised as you.
I think I literally put on my Goodreads once I got past that chapter of, well, this took an abrupt left turn.
I think that's the point at which you were like, okay, so things just happened, and that took a turn I was not expecting.
Not at all. Loved it. Was excited, but was like, oh, this became a different book. So props to if you don't read anything beyond that blurb, you shall be taken by surprise.
Imp did point out, I love that Zoe has immediately made a note on this. It's because I have thoughts.
Oh, we have
I have thoughts. I didn't realize I didn't read the blurb, so I had not read the blurb. I just heard it recommended by other people. So I'm fascinated by some of the things that are highlighted in that blurb, as opposed to how they play out in the book. Anyway,
indeed. I'm okay. Where to start?
So I start.
Yeah.
Overall, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the book overall?
Overall, yes.
Okay.
I didn't. It was hard to tell. Well, okay. Now here's the thing. I didn't dislike the book. I was never not enjoying myself, but there was a part in the middle where I definitely had the thought of, I don't think I'll be picking up the second one. Which was largely due to I did not care for the protagonist.
Yeah, me either. Okay, but here's my question. Do you think, and this is one of the things I had down, and we can talk about this as we go through. Do you think we're supposed to like April?
I don't think so.
Me either.
And to Hank Green's credit, I think he executed that wonderfully and was great. I personally struggle with media where I can't relate to the protagonist, at least in a book. When it's film, I'm more disconnected from it. But when I'm reading, especially a first-person book, I personally, and this is a fault on mine, I personally struggle when I'm so angry with the protagonist of what are you doing? Stop it! And having to remind myself she's a dumb 23-year-old, and we've all been dumb 23-year-olds, maybe not that dumb. And I will say, honestly, all of my complaints with her as a character have nothing to do with how she handled the Carls.
Yeah.
Because up until maybe the last chapter, or the last bit when, I don't know why I'm being delicate, because we're not caring about spoilers. Up until the last bit where April dies but doesn't die, apparently. I was kind of like, yeah, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
And not even from
Mhm.
a, like, she was coming at it from a I want to be special sort of way. And if I had been, if I had the notion that I'm like, oh, something that I have encountered might be an alien, would it have occurred to me to go talk to a local representative and hope that it gets to the president? Absolutely not.
Like there's a point at which people are like, well, you should have like talked to the president or something. And she even says, she's like, this is how I get taken out by security. Like,
Yeah.
this is how I get removed from the premises. Like, that's not gonna
Like,
occur to
no.
anyone.
And she's like, well, maybe I should have. I'm like, really? Because I think if you had tried, horrible things would have happened to you.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so I guess starting from the beginning.
Yes.
You want
I
to go?
guess.
Okay.
Sure, we can try. I think we're gonna
Yeah,
skip
we
around.
can try. We're gonna end up
it'll be
jumping. I know
inevitable.
us.
I really love that beginning, honestly. Like, it gave me such a wonderful sense of where we were, who she was, where she was in her life, and that kind of like, I'm too cool for the world. At the same time, I want to be an artist. Like,
Yeah, like she starts out working for a tech startup, which like I and like probably 80% or 90% of the people I know have worked in a tech startup. And it's so, it hit those notes so absolutely perfectly. You know? Ooh.
my wife brought me wine. It'll help me not be delicate.
She's not wrong.
It's true.
But it hit those notes so well, and it set the scene so well at the beginning. I don't think, for the most part, my problems that I have with the book aren't execution.
No, for the most, well, I have one execution We've
yeah.
talked about this a little bit. We tried not to talk about any part of it, but my biggest issue, and it was before I convinced Zoe to talk about this with me, I think, is what I was stuck on. All due respect to Hank Green, chapter 12 is obscenely long. Like,
so long.
Like, I think in the audiobook it was
it's an hour and a half.
40 minutes.
It's an hour and a half long. And like, so you were telling me, you're like, there needs to be a chapter break because you were reading the physical book and I was listening to the audiobook, and I'm like, I'm still in chapter 12. Why am I still in chapter 12? It's been an hour. And if it was intentional, and at that length, it has to be.
Right.
It has to be. My only guess is that is the period of time where she is working constantly in the public eye, and she is kind of snowballing herself into her own personal hell. And I'm like, okay, maybe you want us to be exhausted, but like, honestly, it felt like it dragged.
It did feel like it dragged. Like, there was some pacing issues I had with this novel, in terms of execution. Like, not to the point where I'm like, oh god, but but then I also kind of look at it in the way that this, because while this novel is a sci-fi novel, it very much also kind of handles addiction in a very interesting way. And that idea of it, because she's addicted to the validation of internet fame and popularity. And that was fascinating.
Yeah,
I think one of my favorite parts about that is to see it through this lens, because sci-fi and I have a very complicated relationship when it comes to books, because while there are some I absolutely love, there are others I get stuck in because they get a little too bogged down in the technobabble and explaining to me how this world works, where I am very much of the mind of, if it's not important to the plot that I know, I don't want to know. I don't care. Like, some of it will be nice to know, like set dressing, but ultimately I don't need to know how this ship flies unless it is imperative to the plot that I know how this ship flies.
Right.
It just usually gets a little too technical, and I think it usually bogs it down. But with this, there was none of that, and that was very refreshing. Like, anytime Miranda came in with facts, I was like, yes, tell me more.
Yeah, it does a good job of like, it's like she has enough of a tech understanding to be like, I know how these things roughly work, and I can kind of roughly explain it. And if something really technical happens, she's like, "I'm sorry, I need you to speak English now because I'm a graphic designer here. Like
Yeah.
I do PR. I don't know what's happening."
100%.
And I loved Andy. I loved Andy
I
so
love Andy Scamp so much.
He was probably my favorite character, if I'm being honest.
Sweet
He's
little
such
bean.
And he tries so hard to be such a good friend.
All hail the eternal patience of Andy Scamped.
Oh. Oh, I don't think I have like half the patience that he has. 'Cause like it's not until I'm probably in the Forever chapter that that he finally is just like, I think what he says, like he gets up to leave and she's like, "Well, where are you going?" He's like, "I'm going for a walk and I don't know if I'm gonna come back."
Yeah. Or I don't know if I'll be happy to see you if you're back.
I don't know if I'll be happy to see you when I get back.
Oh, that's when she blows up at Robin.
Yeah, it's when she blows up at Robin and she blows up at everyone. And like, he's
bitch.
Yeah, and like up until that point, he's like kind of fading. I do like how he fades into the background the more obsessed she gets with fame, even though it was literally his video that started all of it and that he's been producing and everything. And yet she makes a comment at one point of like, "I haven't seen him for like 3 weeks."
Yeah.
Like, I don't know where he's been, but I don't know if he was here. I don't, yeah. And like, okay, the moment where he breaks down though, after the first attack where someone tries to stab her, and she finally realizes that, like, and he just starts like crying, sitting on her hospital bed, and she's suddenly, and she was suddenly like, I just realized that he was absolutely petrified. Like, he was scared.
He was terrified and prepared to like beat somebody's face in.
And he still did it, and he's still scared. And I was like, he's such a better friend than April deserves.
Calcifer? Good kitty. All right. Sorry. He really is. And like, okay, so going back to try to get somewhat, so she calls him at like 4 a.m. To tell him about this sculpture, and the fact that he's like, I guess having a car in New York makes all the difference.
Yes. Because she was like, yeah, be here in 20 minutes. And I'm like,
how?
New York, how the fuck are you getting anywhere in 20 minutes unless you live down the block?
But like, even then, like, I've walked around, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's changed, but I remember walking around my freshman year of high school in Times Square, like 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and like the Manhattan area, and I'm going, there's a lot of traffic. Like, traffic doesn't die down. Like,
there's a reason it's called the city that never sleeps.
But like, the fact it's
so in any case,
oddly abandoned. Anyway.
Yeah. She calls him at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and is like, "Hey, I found this sculpture." I don't think she even tells him that. She's like, "Hey, this is where I am. Here. Bring your camera."
Yeah, she tells him nothing, and he shows up, which says so much about their relationship. Mm-hmm. I love certain things like that where like the author doesn't have to tell it to you. You just are like, oh, okay, I understand quite a bit about this relationship just based on this. The Forever chapter sounds like a good book title, right? I love it. I honestly, my first, like, because they do a lot of setting up, and I think I love the introduction of Miranda and how it's a very innocuous thing with like, it's the stray email of just, you said it was warm. And I was like, that's such a beautiful way to like introduce this mystery around Carl.
Miranda, for those of you who haven't read the book, Miranda is essentially I think she's a graduate student
at UC Berkeley.
at UC Berkeley who reaches out, because in the video or somewhere online she mentions that she touched Carl and he felt warm.
Oh yeah, she was describing like his compounds and Miranda reaches out with about thermodynamics essentially and explains. She's like, this doesn't seem possible. Could you elaborate?
Yeah, yeah, and she ends up being an integral part of this, and like it's a really great introduction of Miranda.
Yeah, and it's just so
honestly
subtle.
kind of the scientific mindset of like, there is this little thing you said, and I need you to say more about that.
That's interesting. Say more. Freaking great. I don't know if you have anything leading up to that, but like one of my first questions I have for this book is when they go to Hollywood, Carl. So if you have something prior to that, I'd love to talk about that.
I'm curious about your opinions on her relationship with Maya as it presents in the beginning.
Okay, so
like it's very, very clear that April has a very avoidant personality.
Yes, and I'm fine with that. Like, I think it gives a very interesting dynamic. It tells me a lot about how she approaches anything that actually means something to her. I was kind of looking forward to maybe seeing that by the end of the book sort of change, and I don't feel like it did.
I don't think so either.
But I think one of my biggest, like, and maybe it will continue, like, he's got a second book out now. I was just kind of hoping, since she was, so the entire book is written kind of like a memoir, which we'll talk about some of the timeline issues that I think we both had. Your face. But as
so many timeline questions.
Yeah, and when she's talking about Maya, it's very much like with the retrospect of someone who has a very different opinion of it. And so I was expecting her by the end to have a deeper appreciation of Maya and be more like
even if the actions in the book didn't change,
yeah,
at least the narrative voice would be like, I see my actions in a different, like a much
and there was kind of like there's a part at the end where she's like not answering would have been the greatest betrayal, and I betrayed her. Like,
yeah, and I didn't answer. Yeah,
and I do like those moments, but it puts reading it in such a strange place of I'm like, well, is book 2 a continuance of this memoir? Is book 2 the present? What is book 2?
Is book 2 going to be written by Andy? Because the last section of the book is Andy saying, I'm going to write this part because April wasn't here when this happened.
Yeah, I'm assuming he just meant the part
up until she knocks on the door.
Yeah. So
or there is a knock on the door.
Yeah, there's some weird timeline stuff, and I'm like, when was the book's written? Because the book, if the book was being put as in like just omniscient, we're just getting these first person accounts, that'd be different than clearly this is the people who are writing it in a retrospective manner.
No, it's okay. But in the book, they talk about her writing a book and releasing a book, and then they don't say anything about what's in the book.
Yeah, I assumed that we were reading her book.
Yeah, but then
things keep going on.
Things keep going on after the release of the book, and them talking about like her signing books in the book. And I'm like, okay, so either we have a memoir style book that doesn't end at the end of this book that I am reading, or there's some very wibbledy wobbledy happening.
I think that book is supposed to have happened within the timeline of that first book. But yeah, the fact that we have no idea what's in it bothers me a little bit.
Well, see, I don't think that can be right, though, because within the span of like a few chapters, she talks about having written the book with the editor.
The editor whose name I can't remember.
Yeah. But she talks about having written it and released it. And it being released, because then later people are like, oh, you're just doing this for like to boost your book sales. So like it can't be the book that we're reading.
No, that's what I mean. It's like I think it's not the same book. I think it's a separate book about her and Carl that we have no idea what's in it.
Yeah.
And
so and that's
why I'm like the style of choosing to write it as a memoir makes me a little confused, but maybe that will reveal itself in later books.
Yeah.
But going back to your original point about Maya,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had felt more of the chemistry.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we leaned so far into the avoidant that it was like, I don't see what she sees in you, and I don't see what you see in her, despite the fact that she sounds fucking amazing.
I was gonna say, I loved Maya.
I love Maya, but I don't understand,
But I don't...
what you actually, I don't know if you love Maya.
Mm-hmm. And
Even though you say you kind of do.
I'm like, I've definitely been in those relationships where you're like, if I just hang around for long enough, this person I care about will finally break through their bullshit and will be like more committed and they will be more here for me. Which is, I think, what Maya's side of the relationship is.
100%.
But, and I felt more for Maya in all of those situations than I did for April.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, and even at the beginning, I'm like, oh, you're that person. Okay. And yeah, it does set it up very well. But and going into other issues further down the line, with her sexuality and depiction and things that I have opinions about. But that's for later.
100%. But that was, I think the thing is, with those relationships, I think we both have experience where it's but there will be those moments where you see that glimmer of see, this is what it could be. You see that hope, and we never got to see any of that hope.
Yeah.
That moment
the only time,
this is the good part of April where this is what Maya's holding on to. Or
the only time I think I saw the hope is when we watched the hope die from Maya's side.
Yeah.
Maya,
yeah. Baby.
Yeah.
Love you.
Okay, well, that was my question for the beginning of the book.
No, that's fair, because I definitely did write down the thing, and I also have some thoughts about the bisexuality.
Let me put it this way. If you had not read that blurb to me, I would never, ever have thought that her queerness would be an advertised part of the book.
Okay, so I'm just going to address this now, because same. And I think that was probably a marketing decision.
Yep.
I would probably not have put that in the advertising, because I don't think it has really any bit. It's one of those things where it's yes, but it's such a played down thing, and this brings
until
me to
it's not.
This brings me to a note that actually, the more I think about it, the more it kind of gnaws at me. And again, I'm coming at it is easier for me to really talk about the things that I find interesting or feel unanswered or critiqued, rather than because overall I did really love this book. It was very enjoyable. The conversation with Jennifer Putnam about can you just be lesbian?
Can you just be gay?
And not, can you just be gay? Can you not be
Which
bi?
is basically her agent sits down with her and they go through her whole life story so that they know everything. And they're like, well, it looks like you've dated people of, multiple genders. And she's like, yeah, is that an issue? And they're like, well, it just it brings up questions. She's like, I'm bisexual. And they're like, right, could you just be gay? For our PR purposes, could you just be gay? Because it's easier to sell a lesbian than it is a bisexual woman.
And I found that moment very, unfortunately, realistic. My biggest issue with it, though, is it felt like a big old Chekhov smoking gun that never went off. Because the most it's brought up with is with, I'm going to keep calling him Peter Paddywhack, because his last name, Petrawicki, I'm just no, I just think Paddywhack. He brings it up once, and it's such a nothing moment. It's hurtful for her in that moment, but it feels, as queer women, and I'm curious if you feel this the same. Did that feel like such a not moment? I thought that was going to be such a bigger blow up, specifically because if they are advertising her as a lesbian, where is the gay community?
Yes, I will agree with you on that, because but my reaction to basically she is on the air and her nemesis that she's arguing with is like, well, you're hiding things, like you haven't always been gay. And she's like, yep, I'm bisexual. And then we are told that there is a reaction. And we see her individual like drawing back and her being so much more of an asshole because of how she's reacting to this, but there was no impact.
Yeah, I actually don't even remember that sentence about a backlash about her not just being gay.
There was literally like, I think, a sentence about how it was this big thing for time, and like there were and that's the thing though, all I can say is there were reactions to it, and that's about all I got.
And
I think that bothered me so much because it's also used as a turning point.
Yeah.
It's used as a reason for her to crank up her opposition to the people who are like basically the, you know, Peter, whatever the fucks, people who basically follow him. And it was used as a turning point, and I feel like used is the right word for it.
Yeah. And that stuck out to me so much because I'm like, for the fact that it is in the advertising, you have this smoking gun with the agent, and we never actually have anything with the actual LGBT community.
And she never addresses it with Maya.
Never addresses it. Never.
Not once.
It's never talked about more. It's just sort of like,
and that bothered me especially. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just like, fuck Time magazine. Like, I'd want to, like, part of it was like, that's mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like, yeah, you're going to have some of that, but you're also going to have the people who are like, you're going to have the other bisexuals going like, I feel a little betrayed. At the same time, I kind of get it. Like, you should have people on both sides. You should also have, unfortunately, the lesbians being like, oh, oh shoot, what is it? What is the term?
Lipstick lesbian?
No, that's
yeah.
No, never mind. The term I'm thinking of is like lug, lesbian until graduation.
Oh, yeah.
But like that sort of thing, or like, oh, you're not really gay, like you lie. Like, I was expecting something like that, and honestly, I was expecting Robin to be the reason it blew up, because the way. Oh, I'm so glad it wasn't, but I was like, April, what are you doing? April, what are you doing? The fact that you are flirting with your assistant, so many problems, but also you are flirting with your assistant, who is a male presenting gentleman.
Yeah. Who is engaged.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, he's engaged. That's what I was waiting for it to turn into.
That's another throwaway thing, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's a whole thing about like, about how he's engaged and she like meets his fiance or something, and like it's a whole thing.
Wait, I don't remember that at all. I remember the brother.
I think if she didn't meet the fiance, it was very specifically like it was discussed, like something about the wedding was discussed, or like planning the wedding.
No,
something
I think
along
you're thinking about her brother's wedding.
Oh, yes. But still, he is engaged.
Okay.
Like, he's engaged. He's her assistant. She's flirting with him. And I really expected that to be the thing. Yeah. Of being like, she says she's gay, and here she is with her male assistant. Yeah,
I was expecting it to be a scandal, like getting caught. And honestly, like, I'm glad it wasn't.
I would have preferred
at the same time. Yeah, it was one of those things of like, my secondhand embarrassment was like, thank God no. At the same time, I'm like, but you set it up to be this. And I feel like the payoff was not as strong as what you were shadowing. Like, it was like, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen, which also very like cliche of like, you got famous and then you did stupid shit, but would have been also so very appropriate. That I think would have been more impactful than just Peter Paddywhack being like on TV, like, oh, this. And I'm like,
it was such a throwaway. And it was really like, I'll be honest, that was really disappointing.
Yeah.
And like I said, I didn't know that it had her sexuality in the marketing. And that was definitely, I think, a marketing
Yeah, I think it was a
thing.
marketing decision where they're like, oh, well, you know, and don't get me wrong, I love the fact that you have a protagonist who is queer, but it's not really a thing. You know what I mean? Like, you could be like, well, it's not really queer fiction. She's a protagonist who happens to be queer.
Which
Like,
is great. Like,
it is
that
great.
is something
We
that
need
I want more
of
in
that.
books.
But
like, if you're going to make it a focus, make it a focus. If you're not going to
Yeah.
make it a focus, don't make it a focus.
And I agree. I think that was a
Ironically,
choice on the
I
marketing.
need you to make a choice.
Yeah. And I think that was 100% a thing on the marketing people rather than like
Than
I
him,
don't think Hank Green was like, let us do this.
So to circle back around, Hollywood Carl.
Oh God, Hollywood Carl. Okay. So my big if you are a follower of my Twitch channel, you know that I really like puzzle games and puzzles and riddles. I'm not always the best at solving them, but they tickle my fancy in marvelous ways. Carl, they solve a puzzle with a Wikipedia page. My goodness. Okay, how do I succinctly say this? Okay, if you've read the book, you've read the book. If you haven't, suffice to say, they found a frequency that seemed to be playing a song by Queen. They went and looked up the song. There was some weirdness in the coding of the...
No. That was one of the later ones. This was the typos on the Wikipedia page.
That's what I mean. There was some weirdness in the coding that made typos in the Wikipedia page.
That correlated
when you tried to fix them, it then made more typos, which gave them a code that they realized was 3 different elements, thanks to Miranda. Which I'm trying to remember. It was uranium. It was 3 elements, all of which are capable of being found. One was from a...
one was iodine.
Iodine,
one was uranium.
And then it starts with an A. And
ameridium.
Ameridium. You can find it inside a smoke detector. So... and we also learned from Miranda you can get unrefined uranium, which is non-radioactive, on Amazon. But they decide to just grab the iodine from her lab and one of the smoke detectors to try and, like, give it to Carl. Because they're like, oh, he seems to be asking for elements. This was one of my biggest issues. Because they only do 2. They decide against the uranium.
Yes!
And they never addressed it again.
Why did it work if there
Why did it work? Was it supposed to work differently if they gave him uranium? I don't know. It drove me insane. I was just like, wait, how did you... Because I think this is up until this point, I would have done everything fairly the same way that April did in regards to the Carls, except for this. I could not have gone to that Carl without uranium.
Me either.
Like, we need the 3. He asked for the 3. Either something bad could happen if we don't have all 3, because I'm the person who has played way too many games where if you fail the puzzle, like, you blow up, or for some reason,
or nothing happens and you don't know what.
Like, and you've wasted time.
So much time and so many resources, and also they acknowledged that they could get it.
They did. They
said could get it, and they
readily
just
available on
didn't.
Amazon, and they just decided against it, and that bothered me so much.
And the fact that Miranda is a scientist, and she was just like, no, we're just not gonna do this. And even later when they're asking her about, like, what do you think of the results, and she's like, well, scientifically, nothing. Like, scientifically speaking, nothing we did means anything.
Yeah, and that's the thing that drove me crazy. I'm like, Miranda, first of all, you should have been advocating that all 3 things be brought. Second of all, you should have also been advocating that you have a variable. We should not have had April do all of them. Each of you should have done it, or at least 2 of you should have done it. And then maybe you could have done it together on the 3rd one. I don't know.
There should have been iterations.
But that drove me crazy. I was like, why? This is not how this should be.
Same.
But I will say, when the hand detached itself and she's chasing it down the street, the absolute joy I had as they described the castle, because I knew what it was. I got very excited. And I was flailing, and I was like, Angelique, they're mentioning the Magic Castle. Even before they said it was the Magic Castle, because I think they mentioned the street. And I'm like, I think that is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is. And then, like, they go in. She chases the hand into the building.
Oh, my God.
I also have an issue with this. I'm going to let it slide, but because it amused the hell out of me, but I have issues with it. So here's the thing about the Magic Castle. I've been a few times. I have friends who are members. It's a marvelous place. I wish I could show it to you. Unfortunately, it is absolutely against the rules to bring your camera out and take pictures when you are inside the actual building. So I've never done it. I get pictures outside every time, but that's it. And so the hand walked in. I understand why the valet guy let the hand in. It looks like a magician's experiment. But
also, are you going to stand in front of a giant mechanical hand that's running, like...
Absolutely.
He's not paid enough for that.
My issue beyond that is, one, the hand is not in dress code. So don't pretend like it is. Two, so the thing you need to know about you enter into this very small doorless lobby, as she explains. It is lined with books. It's beautiful. It's great. It's like a tiny little library. On the shelf to the left, there is a very small little statue of an owl. And if you say, once you've been checked in, you go up to this owl and you say, "Open sesame," and the door opens to let you into the entirety of the club. How did the hand get in? Does the hand have a speaker? Did he follow in after somebody?
So me having no knowledge of anything about the Magic Castle. First of all, turn around, there's a castle in LA, and I was like, that seems right.
Yes. So it's a club for magicians.
Yeah,
It's amazing. If you ever have a chance to go, it's fantastic. There's how do I even explain it? There's an entire, like, there's parts of it are museums. Like, they've got tricks that were used to create parts of Disneyland. Like, there's a part near the basement where you can see the original, I can't remember what the trick is called.
Cool.
The original model for the ghost ballroom dancing. How that was pitched. It's freaking amazing. And some of, like, the best illusions I've ever had. There's a wonderful piano lounge with Irma, who is a ghost who plays music. You give her a tip and you request. And a lot of it, I'm like, do I know it's not magic? Of course I do. I don't want to know, though. Because I have the glorious ability to dress up in my finery, go into this beautiful home, like Victorian style castle mansion, and pretend to talk to a ghost and have amazing cocktails, and then get to see some of the best illusion work I've ever seen. It's fantastic.
So not knowing that, I was just like, oh, he goes in and disappears. But also knowing that, fair enough. Imp says Morse code.
Who knows?
But okay, no, I can see that. I will admit though, I loved the conversation with the valet.
Yes.
Who is just like, I'm sorry, you can't come in. You're not members. Well, okay, if we get a pass, can we come in? You're not in dress code. Was the hand in dress code? There's no dress code for hands. Like, it is purely the customer. No, my customer service history is just like, I don't get paid enough to let somebody into this place who's not supposed to be in here. So no. Is it weird that a hand the size of a dinner plate just went running past me? Yes, but I also don't get paid enough to ask questions.
Exactly. It is one of the things that I do kind of wish, because she's in the arts, like, LA weird is different from New York weird. I'm willing to admit that. But I feel like there's enough intersection that I feel like April should have been able to roll with this in some way.
Yeah.
And the fact that it stumped her so much made me go like, are you sure you've lived in New York the past few years? Maybe you just haven't been able to, like, have a chance to really see the weird part of New York. I don't know. But if someone had told me like, oh, it went in there, I honestly probably would have said, you don't understand. Like, because it seems like the people there are under the impression that it's a magician's illusion. That, like, it's probably a prop from a trick.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not familiar, spoilers, magicians use fantastic, amazing pieces of technology to create these fantastic illusions, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's what they think it is.
Right.
Why, April, did you not say you don't understand that's my hand at any point?
Yeah.
Like, my technology's gone rogue. Lie! Say something! Like, the fact that it's like, will you please go look for it? Yes, but you have to leave. And then she, like, just actually leaves. Like, you're not gonna wait around for them to, like, look around and come out and talk to you? Or...
And, like, Robin says, he's like, I can get you guys a pass, blah, blah, blah. You can go in tomorrow. But he doesn't say that until after she leaves. Until after she's like, I guess not. And gets into the car.
Her lack of curiosity drives me crazy.
Especially considering, like, I don't know if she's supposed to be just so self-centered that she doesn't ask questions about things. But especially given the, like, it's alien technology, bitch. Like,
which brings us to the dreams. Everybody starts having the same dream. And for some reason, April doesn't really explore it at first. Like, she does a little bit, but not... How do you...
Okay, so I don't know if you have repeating dreams that you feel in control of.
I do.
I have absolutely had those dreams, and they are not good dreams.
Yeah,
but
they're usually nightmares, but still.
Yeah. But I do know that when I was like, I've done this before, I start trying different things to get a different outcome. And she's just like, nah. Like,
yeah.
Again, it's the lack of curiosity. And also she hears two other people humming a song that she doesn't know, but she heard in the dream, and she doesn't say anything about it. For, like, weeks.
I mean, I kind of get the fact that, like, oh, I must have been humming in my sleep. Like, okay, I'm willing to give you that pass. But the fact that you continue to have this dream. And she saw, look, I get it. I love puzzles. And I think that this is more of my issue with April as a person than April as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would have liked to see this story. I know it's not the story that Hank wanted to tell. Oh my god. My wife has brought
Did you have a food delivery?
Salmon.
Ooh.
You're going to share this with me, right? Because this is huge.
Ooh.
Salmon!
That is, like, the size of your face.
It is the size of my face. And it's amazing.
So she doesn't explore it. She doesn't talk to anyone about it. Because I don't know about you, but if I have a weird recurring dream, I'm going to be like, guys, I just got to tell you about this weird fucking dream I keep having.
Right?
Like I keep
my wife
waking
and I
up
talk
in
about
this...
dreams that are not even relevant. Like, hey, I had a weird dream. Can I tell you about it?
I just had a conversation with Evan about a dream where he got really sage advice from Jim Carrey on a beach bench. Like...
That sounds amazing.
Yeah,
I heard supposedly that when you dream about celebrities, it's supposed to be you. Like, you're the celebrity. And I'm like, I give great advice, though I seldom often take it.
But, okay, so then, however, we discover that...
Because you're really good in bed.
Oh, I heard something about I sleep with myself.
She's like, why do I keep wanting to sleep with myself? Because I keep dreaming of Catherine Zeta-Jones. And I was like, well, you're really good in bed, so.
Fair enough.
You shouldn't sleep with yourself.
So
sorry.
No, you're fine. So here's the thing, though. We then find out that the dream can be transmitted. to people, right? So people who come into contact with April, they start having the dream. People who come into contact with people who've had contact with April, it's spreading like a virus, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's my problem with all of this. So far, all of our answers to things have been technological. It's been about codes, it's been about elements. And there is, I don't remember where I read it, but I think it very much captures the issue that I have, which somebody was asking what the difference between science fiction and fantasy is. And the answer that someone gave was, in science fiction, you have to explain it.
To some extent, but yeah.
But basically, in science fiction, you have to have all of the reasons for it. In fantasy, you can say there's magic and it works this way.
Yeah.
But in science fiction, you have to have, like,
I think you
those
need
explanations.
At least a hint.
And we don't get that.
In the same way that we are told about how Carl can't exist because he doesn't have the like we don't have an explanation for what Carl is, but we have an explanation for why Carl can't.
Isn't. Exactly.
Because,
and we never get that explanation with
anything about that in regards to, like, is there nanotechnology? How is this? What is it a...
Yeah. Nothing. We just never got that explanation. And that bothered me so much because it felt... It's not a Deus Ex Machina type thing.
Yeah.
What?
It changed people's brainwaves, and we never got even a hint of how that happened.
And nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that bothered me so much. Because it was like, okay, we've had reasons. Or at the very least, we have known that we don't have reasons.
And again, would that not have happened that way? Would it have happened all at once? Had people brought frickin' uranium? I have questions!
Seriously, though, maybe the reason they're all having this dream, maybe the reason they're all having the dream is because they didn't bring the uranium. Maybe Carl would have just talked to them if you'd brought him the uranium.
He just would have been like, oh, thank God, my mouth is working now.
Oh.
He'd be like, hello. Ooh, I just hit that. Sorry. Hello. Yeah, and so the more we learned about the dream, I found fascinating. Like, I'm like, oh dear God, you could make an amazing video game based off of this, I feel like.
I had that same thought too.
Yes. And then I got frustrated because I realized if they made a video game off of it, it couldn't be with April as the protagonist because April's not a puzzle solver.
She's not.
She does no.
She has no
curiosity about it. No trying to solve the puzzles. And I was like, God damn it.
Her girlfriend, who is not involved directly in this at all, is the one who starts figuring shit out. Maya has more also Mayan numbers.
Right?
Come on.
Also, was that intentional? Like, it can't not have been intentional, right?
It can't not have been intentional.
But it's not, because they never draw attention to it.
And the thing is, I heard Mayan numbers and I was like, oh, this is going to be connected back to Maya. And immediately after they say, oh, such and such about Mayan numbers and code and blah, blah, blah. I was like, and she starts going through a logical thought process. I'm like, okay, so she's going to go through this logical thought process. And then she's going to talk to Maya because she has already established that all of these things are connected to her. And we didn't get there.
Nope. I'm just like,
I'm pretty sure because that's when she wanted to sleep with Miranda. And she was just like, these logical things are nice, but what if I got laid?
I'm just like, God damn it. Maya numbers. God damn it. But I will say, the proletariat, I need to I need it to exist. It sounds amazing. I would read the hell out of this webcomic. It sounds so cute and so fantastic. I love Maya.
I love Maya so much. Also, April's Twitter handle, the April Maybe Not.
April Maybe Not, yeah.
I liked her Twitter handle more than I liked her.
That's fair.
Yeah, and then, so we have, in the midst of all of this, we have the Forever chapter, right? In the middle of trying to figure out this dream. And that's, honestly, her lack of sleep is one of the reasons I was like, maybe this is why this chapter is so long. Is it supposed to, like, muddle things together, which um but so we have this forever chapter, and then does it end with the terrorist attack?
No.
No? Okay.
I think it ends with the interview and then the terrorist attack
Oh,
happens.
yes.
Because
Yes.
when I was reading it, I was under the impression that when she kept talking about July 13th, she was talking about the interview. She was not.
Yeah. No, she wasn't. Um,
Because I was like, this is what the buildup was for. Really?
yeah. Yeah. Um, and so that's right. It ends, and that's, I think that's one of the reasons that payoff was so lackluster and felt so flat, because we had the forever chapter that is it's tiring to read. There's a reason that chapters are broken up in, chunks, and you choose the length of your chapter to pace your book a certain way. So something that long is building something up, and there's supposed to be a payoff
In
at
the
the end, and there
dead
wasn't the
center of the
payoff.
book, too.
Yes, it's right in the middle, and it just, like, for all of the buildup we had, meh.
Nada.
Nothing. And that, I think that's why it bothered me so much in terms of craft,
Yeah.
in terms of the storytelling, because, and I was like, okay, maybe that's a catalyst, and the next chapter will be this big media explosion, everything, and it wasn't. It was just, and now April turns into more of an asshole.
Yeah. And it was just like,
Oh, this is not a. Oh dear.
Which I will say, I liked the fact that from her narrative voice, she was like, there are ways I could have addressed this. They would have been better. But instead, I decided to double down on hating the opposition rather than addressing anything about myself.
yeah.
Because if I could hate them, then I didn't have to deal with myself.
For those of you who have not read, just to bring you back into the fold, April is very much looking at the Carls of like, oh, these are benevolent people who want to observe us. They're here to do good. Maybe the dream will result in some big prize, or they want us to work together to solve things. And then there's a group called the Defenders, who are basically an alt-right proxy, I feel is fair to say, who are like, no,
Yeah.
they're invaders. They want to destroy us. Very xenophobic. And something that I was kind of... their leader is Peter... I'm going to keep calling him Peter Paddywhack, who wrote a book. Do you want to bring up the book? Or your concerns about the book?
So he wrote a book. He self-published a book that that was basically like, he brain dumped it in a weekend and immediately published it. And it was his basically manifesto against the Carls, right? And it becomes this bestseller, like, overnight. And I'm looking at, and right before we started this, I was glancing through the Wikipedia page, and I noticed that it says specifically his best-selling 20-page book called Invaded. Like,
Yeah. Which, to be fair, I'm sure there are some ebooks on Amazon that are that short, and he's continuously updating it as more things come.
mm-hmm.
One thing that bothered me, but I'm like, April, you're petty enough to do this. Why did you never do it? Is he brings up, like, because he was constantly attacking her for, like, profiting off of things, and it's like,
Right.
You say you want to keep people informed that you're doing it for this, and yet before we even, like, knew anything, you were charging people for fear-mongering.
Mm-hmm.
Like, never brings it up. I mean, best-selling on Amazon, all that means is you have to have a lot of people buy it, so
Yeah.
it is possible, especially if you've got people who are, like, afraid, and it's like he's talking about, like, I have all the information about the Carls here. Like, charging $3 for it, I get it. Which also, I will say, $3 for those 20 pages is $3 too many.
Yeah.
That is some severe inflation. having worked in having done some self-publishing and seeing, like, you know, putting out 99-cent short stories and
Yeah.
Goodness.
It was really just that, like, being anywhere in the self-publishing and book publishing world, my brain just went, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
You did what?
I couldn't, like, it. Peter brings up a very interesting point of, and I think we've talked a little bit about this. If I really dislike Peter. Obviously, we're not meant to like him, but I hate how April interacts with him even more. And I think it's because it touches on that absolute cringy part of our early 20s where we're defensive about everything, and we don't take a moment to even look at, like, what
I
we're
will
saying. It's just, you're
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, and that's basically what she doubles down on, is just being like, nope, you're wrong. And there are some things, and so this is one thing I did like about the way that him and all of his people were written, is the one thing they kept asking was, give us proof that they aren't violent. And her response just kept being, and like, she had some things.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the very least that the way they were written was like, give us more information than you're giving us.
Yeah.
But no, the way she interacts with them is the worst.
And I think another reason why it bothered me is I feel like, well, definitely every 23, like every dumb 23-year-old, fine, whatever. But maybe, just maybe, especially given the fact, not just that she's queer. I don't, and this is me acknowledging that not just because you're queer doesn't necessarily you know queer history. But on top of that, she has a very, very in touch black girlfriend that she's dated for quite some time. And there are certain things about the way she talks with Peter about, like, when every time he brings up colonization, basically, where I'm like, you kind of should have more ammo for this. But, and I don't know if that's a matter of it not being thought of in the writing process, of the fact of, like, her having a black girlfriend actually does kind of inform this differently, especially considering that they made a point of her having the conversation of, I'm not going to be a proxy and, like, be a mouthpiece for all black people.
All black people, yeah.
Which I did appreciate that moment, because it's like, yeah, let's stop having this. But at the same time, it's like, I have friends that I don't think I could, like, when I was in a 23-year-old, that, like, if someone was talking about, like, well, it's natural to be a colonizer, like, that's essentially what he's saying.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he said.
Like, they're gonna, like, they have the higher technology, so they're gonna conquer us.
Yeah, yeah. And the vocabulary that he used.
Yeah.
Because specifically he said things about when a more advanced society encounters a lesser society. And that was the type of vocabulary he kept using, and that was never addressed.
Yes, 100%. That was a thing that just consistently pinged in my brain of, like, there's a colonization metaphor here.
It's not a subtle one.
And, like, he's ultimately advocating that colonization is natural. Call him on it. Like,
yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, maybe they never got to that point in their relationship. I don't know. It just, it's one of those things that it's like, even taking a humanities class in high school with my friend who was of African descent, like, I'm like, in high school I was having certain thoughts of, like, that I feel like she should be bringing up. And maybe I have a very different background than she does. That's fine. Maybe they never talked about it because she's avoidant of everything. But
fair.
It did.
I mean, I have absolutely seen in the wild people who have Black partners, Black friends, etc., and are the epitome of, well, it's okay, like I don't pay attention to this because I have Black friends, because I have a Black partner. So that's absolutely a thing.
Fair. I think it's the fact that because you have Maya who she is, to the point where she has a webcomic called The Proletariat. Like, you've told me enough about Maya that it honestly, having her not bring this up further solidifies in my mind, dear God, April, you never deserved Maya.
Also, Maya never brings it up.
And yeah, that also feels weirdly disingenuous because when they're talking later, Maya never brings it up. Ever. Like, and I feel like...
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that isn't, that especially in that realm, and in the hard political conversations that are alluded to, that just stay alluded to without actually being addressed.
So it's one of those things that I'm like,
Also, though,
yeah,
there is a certain amount of, this is written by a white man.
Yes. And And I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. It's more of the fact of my brain going like, Hank, I'm curious about this simply because I feel like you are the sort of person to do your research.
Yeah.
And like, sorry, I'm gonna hate myself for what I'm about to say. Like, even in writing in Changeling, where I don't have a character of a specific ethnic background because she's not from Earth, but she still has to deal with some colorism issues. I talked with multiple friends about their experience in high school of like, yeah, maybe we went to this space, but like, can you talk to me like about this? Does this feel genuine?
Right.
Does anything come up to mind? And I think that's the thing that bothers me is it's like, you made a point of pointing out Maya's
activism
and pointing out that like, we're aware that Maya is like, you made a point of like who this girl is, and that it's never brought up, that it just feels very incomplete to me. And again, like, I'm a dumb white girl speaking about this and just only able to speak to what I know about. If you're gonna talk about something that is not your lane,
right,
you gotta talk to other people. And maybe those, I don't know, maybe that conversation never thought to happen. Maybe it'll happen later. Maybe it just wasn't, or maybe this is gonna end up being something that speaks more to April than actually the author. I don't know. It is something that stuck out to me of just, was this considered? Was this a, like, and that's, it's a thing. Like, we all have blind spots. Again, that's not me like casting a stone anyway. It's just that moment of, yeah, I feel like this would come up. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it's not something that would, or maybe it's something that went in one ear of April and out another.
Robert I think put it really well. It sounds like characters are brought in and not put into use as who they are, and instead as plot points.
That is kind of how it felt a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, that's how I felt with her bisexuality. Like, these things were more plot points. Than really explored in any meaningful way.
And it is also a difficult thing of you're tackling a life-changing alien encounter, first contact.
There's a lot in the book. There's a lot going on in this book. There's a lot
going on, and it's one of those things that like, maybe certain social issues should have been given a bit more care, but they clearly weren't part of the thought process. I don't know. It's one of those things that like, it doesn't quite sit right with me, but maybe I'm not the person to talk about it. And also,
I think that's a good way to put it.
It's 100% that's kind of my something that I would absolutely love to put to honestly many creators of color, of just like, am I completely off base here? I might be.
Yeah.
Like, how, if you were in Maya's place, like, is there something that we have not thought of that, like, would have possibly changed that? That definitely changes your perspective, because, like, for instance, if April was not a white girl, this story would go very differently.
Incredibly different.
Like,
in pretty much every way.
So much.
Yeah.
And I find myself, like, just kind of looking at this and going, like, if I give the author the benefit and say that it's intentional that April doesn't bring this up, or it doesn't occur to April, or that, like, it seems like they've possibly had these discussions and then April just kind of tuned it out, like, or avoided it.
Is honestly kind of how I read it.
Exactly, because she's got a very avoidant behavior, etc. It might not even occur to her. Very self-focused. I am so confused. And I hope it's answered in the second one. And I'm so annoyed, because I was like, I'm probably not going to read the second one. And then the last third of the freaking book happened, and I was like, fuck, no, I need to read the second one.
Yeah.
I don't understand why she was chosen so deliberately.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to know so bad, because I'm like going, you seem to lack, like, you have blind optimism and hope, which, great. Awesome. I love reckless optimism, as I believe Hannah Hart coined, but I don't understand. She lacks curiosity. She doesn't seem concerned, even before the fame, with anyone really but herself on some level. And when given the platform, is still trying to do good, but ultimately gets so wrapped up in herself. So I'm like, I don't understand. And
so I'm going to kind of move us forward.
Sorry.
Because I fear we are getting close to the dead horse with sticks situation.
100%. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I just want to make sure that we don't just end up in circles. So we move on from all this. She continues to be just a terrible person. She becomes kind of a terrible person. And we have gotten through, like, we've figured out that, like, there's these different puzzles and stuff in the dream, and people throughout the world are solving them. Except her, because she doesn't want to. Which is basically what it boils down to, is she doesn't want to do it, so she's not doing it. And there is one there is one puzzle which like comes up at it was a reading for her book. Yeah. Someone asked what the weirdest thing she's seen in the dream is, and she's like, yeah, there's this plane that, like, lands outside the city and I can never really find it. And everyone's like, I'm sorry, there's a what now? Yeah. Because the dream is the same for everyone, and nothing moves in the dream unless you move it yourself. And she's the only one who sees this plane. And it becomes this big thing about, like, people trying to figure it out and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, Peter and his people are like, we have the answer to this. And they'd figured out it was this code thing that was going on.
I do love that when she tells Maya about the dream, because Maya, it turns out, has been solving all this stuff, is part of this big group of people who is all about solving the puzzles. Maya's like, Jesus Christ, like, you needed anything else to tell you were special.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck yes. Fuck yes.
That conversation of just like, you needed just one more thing for your ego. Damn it.
Maya, you were giving me life.
Oh.
And before we, like, talk about the figuring it out, we should establish also that the Psalm is created because of Maya, really. Yes. And everybody else. And it's this great thing that they make of, like, using, it's the one thing that April really does, like, super for good with her audience, of just really trying to, like, hey, if you could have one place to discuss all of this stuff with a dream, what would you want from it? And they feed in and they create this thing called the Psalm, and it's fantastic, where they can start solving puzzles together, which is the answer to Peter and the Defenders, who are like, we're gonna keep this secret, we're gonna, like, we can't, his whole thing of, like, no one can be trusted with the dream stuff, so we're gonna learn it so that we can, like, keep it secret and safe. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm very glad that Maya was there to be like, no, we don't need to do exactly what he's doing. That's bullshit. Thank you, Maya, for being the voice of reason. You poor woman. You shouldn't have to be.
How different would this book be if Maya wasn't involved? Like, if after the beginning she's just like, not done, peace, and leaves, how much different would this book be?
Oh my god.
But so that's all happening, and in the meantime we have basically coordinated terrorist attacks by Peter's group across the world at the sites of,
supposedly without Peter's knowledge, but it feels very if I can make the direct correlation, it feels very Trumpian in nature, with, like, the January 6th riot, of, like, oh, I didn't tell them to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just because you weren't with them doesn't mean... people inciting violence and then not taking responsibility for it. Anyway.
And at the same time as all of this, somebody tries to sniper her through her window.
Yes!
And she is saved
by
the hand.
I did love that. That was a great scene. Oh my god. And I love that the hand is sassy. Ooh, what did he bring you? Hi, Evan!
He's bringing me water.
Good. Hydrate before you dihydrate.
I will hydrate before
I am a ghost.
You are a blur. I loved the sassy hand.
Pretty soon, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Oh, shit.
No, but please keep doing your thing.
Okay.
So I guess.
We will be wrapping up soon.
Yeah, we will be wrapping up.
We're near the end. The end.
Yeah,
is
we're
not
near the end.
of
Don't
what
wanna
we
rush
want to
it.
talk about.
I will. Thank you.
Yes.
I love you.
So they say, Evan. I
like
you am distressful. Oh.
So yeah, she's saved from being assassinated by the hand, which she then manages to kind of communicate with.
I love the sassy hand. Where she gives the one for yes, two for no, and then she asks a question of, like, can you understand me? And he goes, no. I'm like, you sassy bitch.
It was so great. And at one point she's like, are you messing with me? And it doesn't do anything.
It's just like,
like, you know, good. They have a sense of
humor. And then I appreciated the Carls even more.
Yeah.
She's nearly killed. These terrorist attacks happen. I loved how this whole thing was handled.
Yeah.
Honestly, like, once we get to, like, any pacing issues or, like, hey, wait a minute, moments I had are kind of gone once we get into Act 3. And she goes out because she's got an apartment now in front of the New York Carl. She wants to, like, do a video of hope and talking about, like, just even in the darkest times, I'm reminded of, like, the goodness in people. And it is actually really beautiful. And it's one of those things that, like, was it stupid to go out there? 100% yes. At the same time, this is one of the few times where I get it, where I fully support her doing that. Because she really wanted to be that voice of hope for people and support. And one thing that I think she brought up in her own thoughts, it wasn't even like something she said, but when she was talking about like, wasn't Carl responsible for these attacks? And it's like, well, no, just by existing, no. And I thought that was a very interesting, like, leaning towards like, oh, this is how, like, you can see how Peter's like fear mongering gets to people, because it even starts to slightly eat at April. And I was like, oh, it upsets me that you're thinking this, but I think it's such a beautiful choice because it's such a dark night of the soul moment.
And that comes up because while she's out there, somebody stabs her, and Andy tries to smash the guy's face in with a camera. Sweet Andy. And the guy turns into grape jelly.
Him.
Yeah.
I guess.
But the immediate response wasn't that I was saved by them, because one of her thoughts is, was he sent by Carl? And that is one of her first thoughts. And at least she has a moment of doubt. I appreciate that she does have a moment of doubt of like, was I wrong this entire time?
100%. You okay?
Yeah, sorry. My brain just skipped like 4 steps forward and forgot that my mouth was saying words. Because I was jumping forward to the actual best reveal in the book.
Do it. Because honestly, like, there's so much about the end that I'm like, I'm not sure I have much to say about it other than relaying what it is.
Yeah, so they're still working on this final, like, code, basically. And she's in a hotel with, like, Miranda and Andy and Robin. And Robin comes in and is like, we have the code. And she's like, what? That's great. And he's like, Peter's people have the code. And she's like, what? I haven't seen anything about it.
He's probably just
like,
lying. And it's like,
he's probably just lying. And he's like, no, we know it's true. Well, how do we know it's true? Because he told his agent. Well, what does that mean? His agent is also your agent, who is my boss.
Yeah.
And that was great.
That was such a fucking devastating reveal. And like, I knew Jennifer Putnam was like a skis ball. I knew she was. But the realization, especially because she kept pushing like, oh, you guys should talk. Like, you guys should have like a live debate of like, you need to make sure you're engaging with him and that you have a voice in this situation, like, and pushing that. Which means she was doing it with him too. And it's like, you literally had this grown man bully barely older than a child. Fuck
and you
Jennifer.
set her up for all of this. Like, and there is like, and she's like, basically, she, you know, Putnam wins either way.
She made her a target.
Yeah.
Like, by having Peter interact with her so much and like setting them up as adversaries, there is no doubt in my mind that those assassination attempts are kind of the result of the interaction with Peter, which were the result of Jennifer Putnam.
Yeah, Putnam is, if there is a singular villain,
it's Putnam.
It's Putnam. Like, don't make me wrong, Peter is awful.
Peter's horrible, but it's all
Putnam. But Putnam.
Because Putnam had a plan.
Exactly.
Peter was going about it of like, I'm gonna fearmonger,
yeah.
And like, this is
Peter is a internet troll pundit crapshoot.
But
Putnam went into it with a plan, and her plan also was to make money.
Yeah.
And she did. And also, I can't blame April for her response to Robin.
No.
Because while, yes, he has been great and supportive and everything, he knew for like 4 months.
Yeah. So it's like, dude, like, I get
and
it.
All of this had only been going on for like 8 months. So he knew, like, half the time he knew.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like, I get it. At the same time, I also get it.
Like, yeah. Honestly, I think that's what made that moment so great, is that you see how awful it is from everyone's side.
Yes.
At the same time.
So beautiful.
It was. So I wish the bisexuality moment had that gravitas.
Right? So
Like that was the gravitas I wanted from the bisexuality moment.
exactly. Oh.
Ugh.
So they've solved this thing, but they have and they haven't. Because what they ended up doing is actually I don't know if they even really tell you if they have.
No. No. Because
April's
they
like,
get the
I
code.
figure it out, because she realizes the code is something that was sent to her by the Carls, supposedly. We think, I don't even know, actually. Because there was a broken code on when she went flying to LA, her TV was broken and there was a hex code on it or whatever. So that's the code they put in. She's like, I tweeted a picture of it. That's how they got it. But someone has already messed with the code in the Psalm. So when they put it in, supposedly no matter what they put in, it was supposed to put out only April, no one else.
Yeah.
With
an address.
Yeah. And April stupidly goes by herself
against literally everyone's advice.
And then like she starts getting texts. She's hearing David Bowie's Golden Years, I think, playing distantly. She sees grape jelly-ish and clothes and thinks, oh no, the Defenders have been like here and Carl already killed them.
And she's live streaming it on Facebook.
Yeah, she's live streaming it.
Yeah.
She's getting multiple texts from Maya and Miranda and Robin saying it's a trap, don't. And the fact that she doesn't even really like I get it. It's so heartbreaking because you're like, you get frustrated with her because you're like, why aren't you responding to this? Why isn't this even like occurring to you? And the answer is like what really this book is about ultimately, even though it's about aliens and first contact and all this weirdness, ultimately it's about addiction.
Yeah.
And what she's addicted to is literally like, I'm going to be the first. I'm going to be so famous.
I'm special. I'm special.
Yeah.
Look. Yeah.
She keeps mentioning the numbers of how many people are watching the live stream, that it's breaking Facebook. Like, and it's that. I remember feeling panicked. I'm like, just like, oh, like my heart is racing now.
No, I remember like, watching that, just being like, no.
April, and just watching someone like, it honestly was like watching someone like, I don't know, see a giant pile of cocaine and being unable to walk towards it. Like, it is, I don't know if it was intentionally done as a interesting look at addiction, and how absolutely living online and being an internet persona can be addicting in that way, in the same like unhealthy drug-like behavior. But and it is a trap, unfortunately. They tampered with the code. There were 3 people in the Defenders who were working on this. She is kidnapped, she is locked in there, and then they set the building on fire. Which brings us to the song she can't turn off. She tries to turn off the iPod, it doesn't turn off, which is weird. And we find out it's not because of the Defenders rigging it that way. It's because Carl is again communicating through a song. He's done it through I think 3 different songs throughout the throughout the book. It's the Queen song in the beginning, there's a Carly Rae Jepsen song, and then there is David Bowie's Golden Years, which hearing Hank Green talk about how much money this set him back of just needing to have these lyrics in was hilarious.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, oh Hank, oh bless Hank. But I will say that between hearing that on his TikTok and reading this book and going like, why music? Why these songs? And I really hope that's addressed in the next Carl's book, because that drove me crazy in the best way. Because in each of them something had been changed, so it wasn't except I think the Carly Rae Jepsen one or something, I can't remember exactly, but like, point being, it was David Bowie's Golden Years, and I did write it down. A lyric was changed to say, "In every town around the world, each of us must be touched with gold." And April realizes and figures out every Carl needs to have gold pressed to it simultaneously. She tells the live stream, and like people storm. Like some people have some governments have locked off the Carls, so they all storm to like press gold to it at once. And then apparently one Carl shoots off, and then all the others disappear because somehow they were all the same Carl.
Yeah, so like when his hand popped off in Hollywood,
and they
only
disappeared.
Just disappeared. They didn't run away. Yeah. So my thought about all of the music, and I don't know why those songs in particular, but one of the first things we sent into space was music.
Yeah.
And that was my thought, is one of the first things we sent into space is music, so they are communicating back with music.
Oh, I like that. I actually didn't think about that at first.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. It was just one of those things where I'm like, why these songs? Like him.
Yeah, I want to know why Hank was so committed to these songs.
Specifically, that he was like, no, it has to be these. Because I'm like, Hank, there are things out of public domain that you could have used.
No, it has to be David Bowie.
That are within
public domain.
Funny story. I went through the exact same thing with Changeling. There is a song in there that turned out to be Beautiful Dreamer. Originally, it was My Favorite Things from Sound of Music. I didn't want to pay a horrible royalty to that, so
fair enough.
It's one of those things where it's just like, why? I want to know why these songs. Why? Because I want to know everything.
Also, why gold and not in uranium?
Right. What happened to the uranium? This is going to be my mantra forever. What happened to the uranium? But I will say, as April's trying to escape, she's talking with the fire chief or whatnot, trying to get out of the fire because she's going to die, essentially. She doesn't get out of the room. So she goes out of a window as he instructs.
Which just takes her into the warehouse.
Yeah, definitely.
So she's still inside.
Yeah, she's still inside. Definitely breaks some bones on the way down. She's crawling, and a flaming beam falls down on her and presumably kills her or knocks her out or whatnot. Uranium, you ran away. I love you, Robert. Which I think oddly starts one of my favorite scenes, and I can't tell you why it's my favorite. And it's a scene between April and Carl, and I don't know why I'm getting choked up already, but I did start crying during this scene. And it's her talking to him, and he gives her 3 questions she can answer. And I think he mentions like your body is badly damaged. Like it talks about like ripping off half her face.
Yeah. And there's even something where it's like, if you are not someone who likes graphic violence, this is the part you should skip.
Yeah, and I actually really appreciated that. Though it was, again, like one of those weird timeline things of like, how are you telling me this? What is I don't understand.
Yeah.
But one of her questions is, what do you think of humanity? Like, how do we measure up? And Carl just says, beautiful. And I don't know why. But even now, it just resonated.
No,
and it was
that hit me too, of like, even looking at all of the things that happened and all of the violence, that the response they still came back with was just beautiful.
Yeah. And seemed so unique, honestly, because so often I feel like these moments are used to just shit on humanity.
Yeah.
About all the horrible things about us, and the fact that you can still look at us as a whole and still say beautiful. Meant the world. Like, to have an optimistic alien encounter like that.
Yeah.
And gave me hope. I'm not gonna lie. It's something I'm worried about, of just like the likelihood, and I love that Andy brought this up when she was telling about aliens, of like the likelihood of us being alone is ridiculous because of how big the universe is. And the idea that maybe we would be considered beautiful even after all that is wonderful. We're almost done. I'm so sorry, Evan. I love you.
Why don't we just switch tomorrow?
Okay, that's fine. You?
What? She says again, yet Evan, and yet.
Angelique says again, Evan, and yet. We're wrapping up. Angelique said again, Evan, and yet.
We lost our wives. We're talking about books.
Remember when you were like, yeah, this is going to be like an hour?
Look, I had hopes. To be fair, we also started half an hour later than we wanted to because things went over.
So no, I agree with that. It's so nice to have that moment of like, because so many times the theme in this is humanity has been, you know, weighed and measured and found wanting, you know, and because so much of it was about working together and humanity being able to come together in imperfect ways.
Yes, and like to show that a race far superior to ours can still see that, like, well, yeah, there's still some assholes, but that's every race. Like, but you as a whole, like the majority of you came together, and it was beautiful. And like, I don't know why. Maybe I just needed that moment.
I mean, to be fair, it's been a rough few years for Hope.
Yeah. It was just, I loved that. And I would probably like just I have a sneaking suspicion I'll go back and read just that scene like a few times. I don't know why.
I loved Andy's portion.
Yes.
Because after that, after the beam falls on her head and she's in the dream and she's talking to Carl, it switches perspective and Andy says, I'm writing this because April wasn't here for it. And we
assume, like, they think it's because she's, like, when he's, the version of him that was in the moment, they all think she's dead, but no one's found a body.
Right.
And but he also says April asked me to, so it's like, wait, what?
So I just assumed that was on the last call that she had with him, because she calls him she hangs up on the police to call Andy and basically says, I'm not going to be alive, but I need you to not blame yourself. And like to
But now the end makes me think that maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
But I loved his, just the tone of his part of like, we all grieved. Like, we spent months grieving and I am still grieving and it still doesn't feel real. Which I just, from an acknowledging grief, personal grief in the space of larger grief. Because his grief wasn't about the world, his grief was about losing his friend.
Yeah.
And I just, also in the audiobook, that's Hank Green narrates that portion.
No,
I just love Andy so much.
Now I need to listen to that. Also, I love Andy so much. If you ever pick up the audiobook, the woman who does April's portion, which is the majority of the book, is also fantastic.
So good. She's great. Yeah, and then basically one night he starts getting texts from April's number. Well, first he's getting
he hears a knock at the door, and then he gets a text
he's like, that's weird because my building has like a doorman.
Yeah.
But like maybe it's someone he knew. And then he gets a text from April that says knock knock.
And that's where it ends.
And that's where a knock knock, let me in. Which, to be perfectly honest,
says knock knock.
No, it just says knock knock. Which, to be perfectly honest, horrifying. Like, I'm sorry, I'm getting knocks on my door and my dead friend is texting me and says nope. That is the beginning of a horror book.
Yeah. So with that ending, it was like,
yeah.
oh shit, I gotta read the next one.
And that's the thing, is I was almost like, even with Andy wrapping it up, I was like, okay, this could be a good ending.
Yeah, like
And like
I
I'm
can
probably not
maybe
gonna pick
step
up the next
away
one.
and not feel curious enough about like the next one. I might like maybe down the line,
Exactly.
but I don't feel urgency, and then that happens.
And then that happened. God damn it, Hank Green.
God damn it, angry. How dare you? Like, how dare you?
First
Like,
of all, how dare you?
What a cliffhanger! Like, how dare you?
So Robert asked something earlier,
Yes.
which was, did it need to be a longer book or a shorter book? And the thing is, I think the answer is neither.
Yeah.
Because for as many issues as we had with like things that we thought could be better developed or better executed, and the Forever chapter, if the Forever,
I think the
okay,
Forever chapter could be shorter.
The Forever chapter could be shorter,
or it could be at least like chopped up.
yes.
I don't know.
Anything other than being an hour.
And like a good portion of like, because I was reading it on my Kindle, and it was a good portion of the book. Like when I finally got through it, I think I went through quite a bit of percentage.
Yeah. Ugh. It just was so much. So with the exception of that, I actually think it did a pretty good job of being the length it needed to be to tell the story.
There was a lot of setup, so I will say it if you choose to pick it up and you haven't yet, and this hasn't deterred you, because honestly, if you haven't read it, I do recommend it.
Yeah, it's a good book, and it was enjoyable.
It was solid. It was
keeping in mind that we're both writers.
Yeah. I will say it's slow to start, but that also feels very intentional. In fact, she even April, talking to the reader, says like, look, it's my story. I got you by the short hairs. I get to tell it how I want, so I get to like try to make myself as sympathetic as possible. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. I really did enjoy this book.
Me too.
While it's not on our reading list for 2022, I will read it. I'll probably read it as like a secondary one when I've got a little bit of extra time. Just in the background. Maybe we'll talk about it again. Who knows? It'll be a bonus episode because now Zoe and I are both hooked. I guess now that we've finished it, what is something that you would say about if you were giving someone this book, how would you recommend it to someone?
Ooh.
Yeah, sorry, I should have told you that before to prep for that. Note to self.
That's a good question. No, I like that question. Honey, it's okay. The light. We turned Evan turned the lights off because he's going to bed, and now doors are closed and the cat's upset.
Oz.
I would say that it's a book about imperfect humanity.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I think that's really, because I sometimes struggle with recommending things without just telling you what the entire book is.
Fair.
But I would say if you are looking for a book about imperfect humanity, and like still having a note of hope in that. Yeah.
I like that.
What about you? How would you recommend this to someone?
I found it fairly deeply realistic of how we might handle a first contact as civilians. Because the one thing I find about about this book is that you're really seeing this encounter not through the eyes of the government, but through civilian interaction.
That's a really good point.
And very often when we see like things with Independence Day and anything with alien encounters, it usually is very much from the government is involved very quickly.
Military government.
Yeah, and because of the way that the Carls arrive, they're unable to really block the public from them.
I think that's one of the things that made me enjoy this book so much, honestly, was that it felt very real to how we would interact with something. Like, oh, a bunch of statues showed up in all these places. Oh, security feeds were messed with and they showed up. This is probably some type of art stunt. And then it taking time to go, oh, this isn't an art stunt, so what is it? Well, what is it not? And like, that discourse doesn't happen quickly.
No. And then it would absolutely devolve into very, like, yes, there's people in the middle, but it would be mostly dominated by two very vocal sides of they're here for good. No, they're here to destroy us. And then it would become this very... I do like the idea of imperfect humanity. I think that's a very beautiful statement of just this idea of
Nothing drives profit like polarization.
Nothing drives profit like polarization. Quote Angelique Rockwood.
I mean, that's basically just
down,
what
Jennifer Putnam.
That's what Putnam's
Putnam's plan.
That is like, if you find out one day that she has a tramp stamp, that's what it says.
Step 1, polarization. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, profit.
Profit.
That's Jennifer Putnam right there. Putnam's profit. Anyway, I'm way too tickled by it. But I really did love this book in the end, and I wasn't expecting to. And it was unexpected, and I found a lot of hope in it. And for those of you watching, I do want to submit there's two things that I have done in regards to this book on theme. And I'd like to invite you to join me on it. The first is a video will be going up later about art installations near me. Because one of the great things about Los Angeles, and very much in the same way that April describes New York, is that there's art everywhere, and sometimes it gets so overlooked as a result because it's so commonplace. And I'd love to challenge you to see if you can go find some public art in your community. And if you do, if you could tag me on Twitter or Instagram, I'd love to see it. And I'll share it later. And I'd love to see it. And then the second thing is, because we are writers and bitch, we are here for the story, is a writing prompt challenge that I will be sharing mine later in the month of February. Zoe, if you would like to, I would give you that platform as well, but you don't have to. In whatever manner you would like. And the writing prompt for this month of February is going to be, you are going to write about a moment you wish you had done differently in your past in the style of a memoir. Just to kind of sort of emulate what April has done here, is she's written about things like not how you do it differently. Let me be very clear. This is not a think piece about like, oh, if I had done with the knowledge I had now, this is how I would do this differently. No. I want you to go back and write about something in your childhood or even like last week that like now with retrospect you see I handled this poorly and write about it faithfully, if that makes sense. So that is my writing prompt challenge to all of you. Before I wrap up, Zoe, is there anything you would like to add to this wonderful moment that we've got to share? It's okay if the answer is no.
I embrace your imperfect humanity.
Oh, I like it. Embrace your
Yeah.
imperfect humanity.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again next month. Our next book is How to Lose the Time War, or This Is How You Lose the Time War. I'm really excited to start it. And keep your eyes peeled for our lovely themed video. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've read the book in the comments and such. As well as I look forward to your writing prompts. I hope you join me on this little writing exercise as we tell our lovely stories. Zoe, I know that they can find you as I Am But a Bookworm. Where can they find you?
TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram are all under I Am But a Bookworm.
Fantastic. And as always, you can find me under Kiri Callaghan, except for on my Twitch channel where I am Curiosity. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, which they are hopefully watching this on. My wife's
And Patreon.
Patreon, which my
And her
wife's
she has a Patreon.
and TikTok. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope to see you again soon. I can't wait to hear all of your own stories and your thoughts about this story. And until next time, keep on the windy side of care and, of course, stay curious.